Warning: since I am listing my favorite stories from the series, I might reveal some spoilers throughout each story. So if you have not seen the series or any of the stories I've mentioned, then feel free to watch the series before viewing this video. But if you have seen the series before and all the stories from the series, then keep watching. Rabbitears Productions was a children's company that showcased stories from fairy tales to folk tales from around the world that premiered in 1985. This series also featured popular actors and actresses who would narrate the stories, including Meg Ryan, Robin Williams, Denzel Washington, Danny Glover, Jack Nicholson, and many more. But since I have already done a video about the history of Rabbitears Productions, which you are free to check out, as the link for my Rabbitears Production commentary video is in the description box below, I would just skip to listing my top 10 favorite Rabbitears stories. So here's my list of my top 10 favorite Rabbitears stories. Number 10. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Washington Irving's timeless horror classic, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, comes to life as actress Glenn Close narrates the story of a well-known schoolmaster named Ichabod Crane, who tries to win the affections of a rich woman named Katrina Van Tassel, while hearing terrifying stories about the Headless Horseman from the town folks. Now, when I first looked at this story years ago, I was surprised at how dark yet exciting the story turned out to be. Glenn Close did an excellent job at narrating the story. She gives the story a dark yet mesmerizing feel, and I love the music done by Tim Story, as it is haunting and beautiful at the same time. Robert Van Nutt's illustrations on this story are really beautiful, and I love the old-fashioned feel that Robert Van Nutt brought to the town of Sleepy Hollow. I really enjoyed the story because it was a great adaptation to the classic horror story, and everything meshed so well in the story, from the gorgeous artwork by Robert Van Nutt to Glenn Close's dramatic narration. I especially love the scene where Ichabod Crane is being chased by the Headless Horseman, as the Headless Horseman is a black silhouette of a headless man riding an eerie-looking horse, and this scene was really frightening to look at. Number 9. The Tale of Mr. Jeremy Fisher and the Tale of Peter Rabbit. Beatrix Potter's two classic tales, Peter Rabbit and Mr. Jeremy Fisher, come to life as Meryl Streep narrates both stories, which involves Mr. Jeremy Fisher going on a fishing adventure only to end up in the belly of a fish, and Peter Rabbit disobeying his mother's warning about going to Mr. McGregor's garden and has an adventure of a lifetime. This is another one of my favorite Rabbitears stories, as the narration, the illustrations, and the music mesh so well together to create two unforgettable stories. This is one of the few Rabbitears stories where two stories were being told at the same time, which allows us a chance to choose one of the stories that we like the best. In this case, I love both stories as they were both well told. Meryl Streep has done a fantastic job in narrating these two classics from Beatrix Potter, as her narration is smooth and soft, and it gives these two stories a warm-hearted feel to them. Lyle May's music was extremely mesmerizing, as it's mainly accompanied by piano music for the tale of Mr. Jeremy Fisher, while the tale of Peter Rabbit has a jazzy tone to the music that makes me want to dance every time the theme song comes up. And I'm proud to say that the ending theme of the tale of Peter Rabbit has become one of my most favorite music compositions for Rabbitears Productions. David Jorgensen's illustrations are just so gorgeous to look at, as the drawings are done in light tones, and the animal characters look so realistic that you would have thought they came out of photos or something to that nature. Number 8. The Fisherman and His Wife. In this classic tale from the Brothers Grimm, when a poor fisherman picks up a magical flounder that proclaims that it could grant the fisherman any wish he wants as long as he sets him free, the fisherman sets the flounder free and tells his wife about it. However, once the fisherman's wife finds out about the magical flounder, she forces her husband to go to the flounder and grant them any wish he desires, which eventually leads up to the fisherman's wife demanding to be a queen and then the ruler of the universe. Another one of my favorites from the Rabbitears series, I just loved everything in the story, especially Jodie Foster's narration, Van Dyke Park's music, and Diana Bryant's illustrations. Jodie Foster provides the perfect narration so narration sounds gloomy, which fits just right with the overall gloomy mood of the story. Van Dyke Park's music is just so beautiful and haunting at the same time, as the music has that old Victorian soundtrack that really brings out the dark yet sophisticated mood of the story. Diana Bryant's illustrations are beautifully haunting, as the characters are mainly in black silhouettes, which give the story an eerie mood. So basically everything about the story was dark and eerie, but it was done in an impressive way that I really appreciated the darkness of this tale. Probably my favorite scene in this story was when the storm started to hit the countryside when the fisherman went to the flounder for the final time, and you could see the houses falling off the hills and the trees being ripped from the ground. Number 7. The Emperor and the Nightingale. In this classic tale from Hans Christian Andersen, when the Emperor of all China discovers that there is a rare bird called the Nightingale living around his land, he orders his servants to seek out the mysterious bird and bring her to him. When the servants successfully get the Nightingale to the Emperor's palace, the Nightingale sings to the Emperor so beautifully that the Emperor wanted the bird to stay with him, although the Nightingale doesn't want to stay at the palace. One day, however, the Emperor receives a beautiful mechanical bird as a gift from another country, and he starts giving more attention to the mechanical bird than to the real Nightingale. But when the Emperor becomes very ill and is on the brink of death, he would soon realize that the real thing is better than the artificial thing. I have always enjoyed this story as a child, and Glenn Close's narration was just perfect for this story, as she made the story so touching and exotic at the same time. I also love Mark Isom's Chinese-influenced music, as it brought a true beauty and uniqueness to this wonderful tale. And Robert Van Nutt's illustrations are just simply so beautiful, as the images of the Emperor's palace that has flowers and various exotic plants surrounding the palace are just so dazzling to look at. I also like the message of the story about how true beauty is more precious than having riches, as the real Nightingale proved to be the true savior of the story by showing the Emperor that having a mechanical bird that looks beautiful is not always the most precious thing in the world. Number 6. Brer Rabbit and Boss Lion. In this tale, when a bully named Boss Lion started eating up all the citizens of Brer Village, the citizens of Brer Village tried to think of ways to stop Boss Lion from eating any more animals in the village, but they could not come up with a solution to the problem. It wasn't until Brer Rabbit suggested he would confront Boss Lion about eating the animals of Brer Village, although Brer Rabbit was actually scared of Boss Lion. When Brer Rabbit does confront Boss Lion, he decides to make a deal with Boss Lion about how he and the animals of Brer Village would feed him 3 times a day. But when things get out of hand, it's up to Brer Rabbit to save the day. This was a story that has always stayed with me because it was just so fantastic. Everything in this story just mixed so well together, and I really love Danny Glover's narration on this classic Southern tale, as he brings so much energy to the story, especially when he is voicing Boss Lion. Whenever Danny Glover was voicing Boss Lion, his voice sounds so menacing and loud, which fits Boss Lion's character so well. I also love the way that Danny Glover's voice reaches a high pitch whenever he shows how the animals of the Brer Village are terrified of Boss Lion. Dr. John's jazzy music really fit in the mood of the story perfectly, as the movie music does get intense whenever Boss Lion comes on during the scenes, and it also gives the story a somewhat modern feel, which really made me enjoy the story even more. Bill Mayhew's illustrations were both humorous and creative to look at, as the animals may look a bit distorted. Brer Rabbit's body seems larger than his bottom half, but it really fits the humorous mood of the story very well. Number 5. The 3 Billy Goats Gruff and the 3 Little Pigs. Holly Hunter narrates 2 classic tales, The 3 Billy Goats Gruff and the 3 Little Pigs, and both stories involve the characters dealing with big bad bullies who want to do them harm. In the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, the 3 Billy Goats have to deal with a hungry and menacing troll that wants to eat them once they cross the bridge. In the 3 Little Pigs, when the big bad wolf threatens the 3 pigs, it's up to the 3rd little pig to set that wolf straight. Another set of stories where there are 2 stories shown at the same time. These 2 stories have always been one of my favorite Rabbitears stories when I was a child, since it contains so much humor that really appealed to me. Holly Hunter was just fantastic as the narrator of these 2 stories, and I love the new modern spin she puts on both stories, especially when she voiced both the middle Billy Goat Gruff and the Big Bad Wolf as being hip characters. Art Londy's music was perfect for these 2 stories, as it blends old-fashioned tunes with pop music tunes, such as how the music for the middle Billy Goat Gruff and the Big Bad Wolf sounds so jazzy, which makes both characters seem so groovy. David Jorgensen's illustrations were beautiful, as all the animal characters look so realistic, and I love the humorous expression he puts on the characters, especially with the Big Bad Wolf having a goofy grin on his face whenever he is trying to be friendly towards the 3 pigs. Number 4. How the Rhinoceros Got His Skin and How the Camel Got His Hump. In these 2 tales from Rudyard Kipling's famous Just So stories, both main characters get their just desserts after they have treated other characters quite rudely. And How the Rhinoceros Got His Skin, a rude rhinoceros gets what he deserves when it ends up eating the Parsi man's cake without his permission, and the Parsi man gets his revenge on the rude rhinoceros. And How the Camel Got His Hump, when the arrogant camel refuses to work and causes the other animals to have extra work, it's up to the Jinn of all deserts to set that camel straight. Another set of 2 stories told at the same time. This was easily the best set of stories ever told from Rabbitears. Jack Nicholson was so brilliant in narrating these 2 stories, as his voice sounds so silky and monotonic, but truly fits the spirit of these 2 stories very well. Bobby McFerrin's music is just so wonderfully done, as he mainly uses his voice to make music, which gave these stories a creative flair unlike anything I have ever seen. Tim Radcliffe's colorful illustrations truly captured the exotic nature of these stories, as the desert scenes are truly captivating to look at. Probably my favorite scene from one of the two stories, How the Camel Got His Hump, was when the camel was doing an exotic desert dance when he was soared through the air and seems to spin in the air, which I found quite hypnotic to look at. Number 3. John Henry. In this popular tall tale, we are introduced to the legendary railroad steel driver John Henry and all of the amazing stunts he has pulled during his life. Not only is John Henry a legend among the railroad line, but his race against a steam drill remains to be one of his most amazing feats ever done. This classic interpretation of the legendary tall tale is probably one of the best versions I have ever seen. Denzel Washington has done a brilliant job in narrating this story, as he has that proud tone set for the character John Henry, as we are led to believe that everything that John Henry has done is beyond amazing, which it was. Barry Jackson's illustrations were brilliant, as John Henry is very muscular and always has a wide grin on his face that implies how confident he is about the stunts he is pulling. But the best part about this story was B.B. King's jazzy blues music, as it may seem too modern for this type of story, but it fits the mood perfectly and made the story jump ahead of its time. What I really loved about John Henry was the fact that the character John Henry was so dedicated to his work on the railroad line that when he felt that he was being threatened of losing his job to the steam drill, he tried everything he could to keep his job and passion, which I found to be very endearing to his character, that he would never give up the fight no matter how hard it is. Number 2. Pecos Bill. In one of the most beloved tall tales, we were introduced to the amazing adventures of a man born a coyote named Pecos Bill. Join Pecos Bill in his adventures from starting the first cattle drive to fighting a tornado. This was easily one of the most memorable Rabbitears tales to date, since everything from the narration to the illustrations was done to perfection. Robin Williams was spectacular in narrating this tale, as he gives life to this tale by providing so many humorous jokes throughout the story, and I love the way he uses a Western accent to really bring out the Western influence of the story. Ry Cooder's music is the perfect choice for the story, as his Western-style solo guitar music really brings out the Western vibe of the story. Tim Radcliffe's illustrations are once again beautiful and colorful in this brilliant adaptation of the old tall tale, as Pecos Bill truly looks remarkable with his red shirt and white fur pants. And my number 1 favorite Rabbitear story is The Fool and the Flying Ship. In this ancient Russian folktale, when the Tsar of Russia sends a proclamation throughout the land that whoever builds him a flying ship will win the hand of his lovely daughter, the princess, a peasant boy who is known as the Fool decides to go on the journey to build such a ship. However, after the Fool finally gets the ship ready, with a little help from a strange old man, he ends up meeting several strange men who all end up having strange superhuman abilities that eventually helps the Fool when the Tsar refuses to give his daughter's hand in marriage to a peasant, and starts coming up with several tough challenges for the Fool to complete before he marries his daughter. It's so obvious that The Fool and the Flying Ship is my absolute favorite story from Rabbitears. Everything in the story was perfect, as the narration, the music, and the illustrations came together and created one of the most talented stories to ever come from Rabbitears Productions. Robin Williams was a sheer genius in narrating this story, as he has a Yiddish accent narration that greatly complemented the story's Russian roots. And the klezmer conservatory band's wild Eastern European music is just so delightful listening to, as it greatly complements the silly nature of the story. Henrik Drescher's surreal and wacky illustrations greatly wraps up everything that made the story so brilliant, as there are characters that are quite out of this world, especially with the appearances of the superheroes, one of them being a fast runner who has horns in his head. But is that all? Definitely not. Next up, I have a couple of Rabbitear stories that I really enjoy but didn't make the top 10 list, which are some honorable mentions. So here are some of my honorable mentions. East of the Sun, West of the Moon. In this ancient Scandinavian tale, when a young girl discovers their friend the White Bear is willing to prince under a curse caused by an evil witch, she goes to such lengths to break the curse. Max von Sydow's narration is solemn at best, but it beautifully fits the epic feel of the story, and Lyle May's music is just beyond beautiful, especially during the piano pieces. Vivian Flesher's illustrations are just gorgeous and haunting to look at, and I love the image of the young girl herself, as she is truly beautiful with her dark eyes and her long blonde hair. Paul Bunyan. In one of the most well-known tall tales, join Paul Bunyan as he begins the world's most well-known logging industry and complete a huge task for none other than Teddy Roosevelt. Jonathan Winters was just so brilliant in narrating this popular tall tale, as he gives a cheerful narration that makes the story engaging to listen to. Leo Kottke and Duck Baker's music greatly complements the story, as it has a traditional feel with mainly guitars and a drum to accompany the story. Rick Meyer's illustrations match the story well, as the characters always have wide grins on their faces, and the various stunts that Paul Bunyan pulls, such as chopping down a dozen trees in one swing, is greatly enhanced by Rick Meyer's drawings. Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks. Another set of tales told at the same time. The main characters in these two stories will learn that not being cautious when going off anywhere by themselves will have grave consequences. In Red Riding Hood would soon discover that wandering away from the path in the woods has its own consequences when she encounters a sly wolf. In Goldilocks, a young and troublesome girl would soon learn about the importance of good manners when she encounters the three bears. Meg Ryan has done a brilliant job in narrating both of these tales, as she was excellent in voicing the wolf in Red Riding Hood, as she provided a French accent for the wolf. And in Goldilocks, Meg Ryan gives a southern accent that brought more sass to this ancient fairy tale. Art Lonnie's music once again gives spirit to the story, as we have an old-fashioned feel to Red Riding Hood and contemporary spin to Goldilocks that made both stories enjoyable to watch. Laszlo Kobene's illustrations are just so beautiful, and I love the images of the lush forests that the characters walk through. Finn McCool. In this ancient Irish folk tale, when a famous giant named Finn McCool has to do battle with a bully giant named Cuchulainn, his wife Una has a clever plan that might put Cuchulainn in his place. This story was hilarious and very clever, as I found myself cheering for Finn and Una as they bested Cuchulainn using only their wits. Catherine O'Hara did a fantastic job at narrating this tale, as she has an Irish accent, and her narration is just so full of life that the story became an enjoyable experience for me. The Boys of the Lowe's music is beautifully done, as its Irish influenced music truly captures the beauty of this tale. Peter De Silva's illustrations are beautiful and clearly capture each character very well, especially of Finn McCool having blonde hair and old-fashioned clothing that seems to stem from medieval times. The Firebird. In this ancient Russian folktale, when a young archer named Ivan discovers the feather of a firebird, he wanted to show it to the Tsar of Russia, despite his horse of power's warnings about giving the feather to the Tsar. However, the Tsar decided that he must have the Firebird, and eventually the Princess Vasilisa, which causes Ivan and his horse of power to retrieve them. I just love the way that Susan Sarandon narrated the story, as it sounds solemn yet determined at the same time, as she voiced these characters. I really enjoy Robert Van Nutt's illustrations, as they are truly beautiful and truly capture the Russian-influenced spirit of the story. Mark Isaacs' music is truly beautiful, as it brilliantly captures the Russian-influenced score of this story. Well, that's my top 10 favorite Rabbitears stories, and feel free to tell me your top 10 favorite Rabbitears stories, or which stories you liked from this list, and stay tuned for more of my top 10 videos in the near future. This is Rabbitearsblog, and I'll see you later.